Blood trickled warm down his hand, mixing with the downpour, as he slid to the ground, sobbing into the crook of his arm. Not for the words, but for the boy he'd been, the one who'd believed love could be simple. 5 months from that night, and the wound still festered like an open sore. But tonight, as thunder cracked overhead like God's own judgment, 2 silhouettes emerged from the shadows, their faces pale ghosts in the storm. His mother and sister, drenched and desperate, whispering his name like a prayer he no longer believed in. Gavin had always known the world was sharper for boys like him. The ones who dreamed of calloused hands and stolen kisses under neon signs in the heart of America's crumbling promises. Born in the Rust Belt grit of Pittsburgh, where steel mills whispered ghosts of better days and church steeples loomed like accusatory fingers. He'd grown up dodging his father's belt and his mother's averted eyes. Frank Harlan was a man forged in the fires of factory shifts and Vietnam flashbacks. His love as unyielding as the iron he once welded. Conditional, rusted, and quick to snap. Gavin's sister, Lena, was the golden child. Her laughter a shield against the silence that hung heavy in their shotgun house on the edge of the Mon Valley. But Gavin? He was the quiet storm, sketching feverish portraits in the margins of his textbooks. Hearts tangled with hidden longings he buried deep, like contraband in a smuggler's coat. It started unraveling senior year, when the whispers in the locker room turned to shoves, and the pastor's sermons on Sodom and Gomorrah felt aimed straight at his chest. Gavin had his first kiss behind the bleachers with Tommy Reyes. A fleeting brush of lips that tasted like cherry gum and forbidden fire. Electric, terrifying, over before it began. Tommy bolted, face flushed with shame, and Gavin learned the first rule of survival. Swallow the ache, spit out the truth. He carried that secret like a stone in his gut through graduation. Through the dead-end job at the auto shop where grease blackened his nails and his father's grunts passed for approval. "You're a Harlan, son. Act like it," Frank would say, clapping him on the back too hard, eyes scanning for weakness like a hawk spotting prey. College was supposed to be the escape hatch, a scholarship to Carnegie Mellon that promised art studios bathed in golden light and a city that pulsed with possibility. Pittsburgh's bridges arched like veins over the Allegheny, carrying dreams across murky waters, and for a semester, Gavin breathed easier. He roomed with Ellis, a lanky theater kid from Philly with a laugh like summer thunder and eyes that lingered too long on Gavin's sketches. Their late-night talks over cheap ramen evolved into tentative touches, fingers brushing under the desk, a shared blanket during movie marathons that dissolved into something softer, hungrier. Ellis called it falling into you. His voice husky in the dark of their dorm, and Gavin believed him, let himself unravel in the safety of those stolen hours. For the first time, love didn't feel like a sin scribbled in the family Bible. It felt like coming home. But secrets in a steel town have a way of corroding, seeping through cracks like rust on an old Ford. Lena found out first, walking in on them one weekend when she crashed at the dorm, her key turning in the lock like fate's cruel punchline. Gavin froze, shirt half unbuttoned, Ellis's hand warm on his thigh, and Lena's gasp shattered the air. "Gav, what the hell?" Her voice cracked, not with disgust, but confusion. Love tangled with the catechism their mother drilled into them. She didn't tell, not right away, but the weight of her knowing pressed on Gavin like an anvil. He pulled away from Ellis, excuses piling up like unpaid bills. Midterms, family dinner, the flu. Ellis fought it, cornering him in the stairwell with pleas that bordered on poetry. "You're running from shadows, babe. Let me be your light." But Gavin couldn't shake the Harlan echo in his bones. Thanksgiving snapped the thread. Back in the house that smelled of turkey and unspoken resentments, Gavin cracked under the wine and the warmth of his father's rare praise. "Proud of you, kid. Making something of yourself." The words unlocked something reckless, and after Lena's pleading glance across the table, he blurted it out over pumpkin pie. "Dad, I'm gay." The room went still as a grave, forks clattering like bones. Frank's face twisted, veins bulging in his neck like rivers about to flood. "What the fuck did you just say?" His chair scraped back, and the tirade erupted. "Filthy, abomination. How dare you spit on everything I fought for." Saliva flecked the air, his fist slamming the table so hard the gravy boat tipped. "Mom," Evelyn reached for him, her voice a whisper. "Frank, please." But he shrugged her off. eyes locked on Gavin like he was a stranger wearing his son's skin. "You're no son of mine. Get out. Get the hell out before you poison this house." Frank's roar chased Gavin up the stairs, where he shoved clothes into a duffel, heart hammering like a piston. Lena followed, tears streaming, grabbing his arm. "Gav, don't. Mom, say something." Evelyn stood frozen in the doorway, rosary beads twisting in her fingers, her silence the loudest betrayal. Gavin paused at the threshold, searching her face for the woman who'd bandaged his scraped knees and sung him to sleep, but all he saw was fear. Fear of losing the man she called husband, the fragile piece she'd stitched together with prayers and pretense. "I love you," he choked out, but she turned away, shoulders shaking. The door slammed behind him into the November chill, the porch light flickering like a dying star. He drove east that night, the Ohio Turnpike a blurred ribbon under sodium lamps, radio static drowning his sobs. Pittsburgh shrank in the rearview, a cage he'd finally cracked, but freedom tasted like ash. He crashed in a Fleabag motel outside Cleveland, the kind with vibrating beds and roaches that skittered like guilty thoughts, waking to eviction notices and an empty wallet. The scholarship money was gone. Frank had called the school the next morning, venom in his voice, pulling strings with old mill buddies on the board. "Can't have that kind of filth representing us." Gavin's pleas to the dean fell on deaf ears. Bureaucracy was a wall thicker than steel. By dawn, he was jobless, homeless in spirit if not yet in body, hitchhiking toward New York with a thumb out and a prayer he didn't mean. The city hit him like a freight train, Times Square's assault of lights and horns, the subway's metallic roar echoing his pulse. He washed up in Brooklyn, crashing on a cousin's lumpy couch in Bed-Stuy until the fights over rent drove him to the streets. Shelters were roulette, kind faces one night, leering eyes the next. He buskied with his sketchpad on the High Line, charcoal portraits for $5 a pop, capturing tourists' fleeting smiles while his own faded to a grimace. Hunger gnawed, but pride kept him upright. Harlan stubbornness, Frank would call it, if he cared enough to notice. Nights blurred into hookups in dive bars, anonymous bodies chasing the ghost of Ellis's touch, but dawn always brought the hollow ache back, sharper than before. That's where he met Riley. It was a Tuesday in March, 5 months to the day from the pie-flinging apocalypse, and Gavin was nursing a watered-down whiskey at the Rusty Nail, a queer hole-in-the-wall off Atlantic Avenue where drag queens held court and the jukebox spun Patsy Cline like a lifeline. Riley slid onto the stool beside him, all lean muscle and easy grin, his faded Yankees cap pulled low over eyes the color of Hudson fog. "You look like you could use a refill, or maybe just someone to tell you you're not invisible." His voice was Brooklyn-born, rough edges softened by genuine warmth, and Gavin's laugh escaped before he could cage it, bitter, surprised, alive. Riley was a barista by day, aspiring photographer by night, the kind of guy who saw beauty in cracked sidewalks and believed in second chances like they were subway tokens. He didn't pry about the fresh bruises on Gavin's heart, just shared his fries and stories of botched shoots in abandoned warehouses. By closing time, they were stumbling back to Riley's walk-up in Greenpoint, a shoebox apartment stacked with film canisters and Polaroids of strangers' secrets. Their first kiss was tentative, snowflakes melting on Gavin's lashes outside the door, Riley's hands framing his face like he was framing a shot. "You're stunning, you know that? Like a storm waiting to break." Inside, clothes shed like old skins, and for the first time since the alley, Gavin let himself be seen. Really seen, scars and all. They fell into rhythm like a well-worn album, Riley's camera capturing Gavin's unguarded moments. Laughing over burnt pancakes, sketching by the fire escape as sirens wailed below, tangled in sheets with morning light gilding their skin. "You're my muse, Harlan?" Riley murmured one dawn, tracing the silver chain Gavin still wore. A relic from Mom, now a talisman against forgetting. Gavin opened up in fragments. The father's rage, the mother's silence, the sister's torn loyalty. Riley listened without judgment, his own confessions spilling out. Kicked out at 17 by a Bible-thumping stepdad, scraping by on grit and grants. "We rebuild what they break," he said, sealing it with a kiss that tasted like possibility. But love in the margins is fragile as tissue paper, and New York's underbelly has teeth. Gavin landed a gig illustrating for a zine, queer voices amplifying the unheard, his lines fierce with the pain he'd swallowed. Riley's photos paired with them, a visual poetry that caught eyes at readings in Alphabet City. They dreamed big. A gallery show, a road trip down Route 66, a life stitched from thrift store threads. Lena texted sporadically, "Miss you. Bro, mom's a wreck. Dad." Gavin replied in bursts, walls half lowered. But Frank's shadow loomed. A specter in every "I love you," he hesitated to say. The betrayal came swift as a summer squall. Riley's big break landed. A fellowship in LA, Sundance scouts sniffing his reels. "Come with me, Gav. We can start fresh, palm trees, no rust." But doubt coiled in Gavin's gut. He'd clawed for stability here, fragile as it was. "What if it's just running again?" he whispered, and Riley's face hardened, words tumbling like loose change. "Or what if it's living? You're still chained to that ghost, man. Let go." The fight escalated in the kitchen, Riley's voice cracking. "I can't drag you if you won't walk." He left tickets on the counter. Open-ended, a plea, and vanished into the dawn, taillights fading like a bruise. Gavin tore them up, the rip echoing his chest, and drowned the night in whiskey that burned less than the truth. He'd pushed Riley away, Harlan fear masquerading as caution. Days blurred into weeks, sketches turning savage, portraits of fractured faces, his own staring back accusatory. The zine folded, gigs dried up, and the couch in a friend's Williamsburg loft became his exile. He ghosted Lena's calls, the city closing in like a fist. Until that rainy Thursday in August, thunder rumbling like distant artillery, when the knock came, insistent, drenched. He yanked the door open, expecting a bill collector or a wrong address, but there they stood. Mom and Lena, umbrellas discarded like white flags, faces streaked with rain and something deeper. Regret, perhaps, or the erosion of time. Evelyn's hair, once a crown of chestnut waves, hung limp and graying, her coat clutched tight against the chill. Lena, sharper now at 25, her eyes red-rimmed behind fogged glasses, held a soggy bakery box like an offering. "Gav?" Lena breathed, voice breaking the dam. We had to come." Gavin's throat tightened, the alley flashback surging. Blood on bricks, thunder's judgment. "How'd you find me?" he rasped, not stepping aside, the threshold a Berlin Wall of his making. Evelyn's gaze dropped to his split knuckles, healed but scarred, and she reached out a trembling hand. "Your sister." She never stopped looking. "Please, son. Just hear us." The word "son" landed like shrapnel, twisting old wounds, but Lena's plea, "He's gone, Gav. Dad's gone." Froze him. Gone. Heart attack in the mill, they said later, stress and stents and a final collapse under the weight of unspoken wars. Frank Harlan, felled not by bullets in Nam but by the bile he'd spewed at home. He let them in, the apartment shrinking under the weight of their presence, steam rising from wet boots on the linoleum. Lena unpacked the box. Apple turnovers from Millie's, the bakery where Frank proposed, flaky crust flaking like their family portrait. Evelyn perched on the edge of the sagging couch, hands folded like in church, while Gavin paced, a caged wolf. "Why now?" he demanded, voice raw as the rain outside. 5 months of radio silence, and you show up when he's cold? What, need me for the eulogy? To play the prodigal straight? Lena flinched, but Evelyn's eyes, those soft hazel mirrors of his own, welled up. "No, Gavin. We were wrong. All of us." Her voice, cracked porcelain after years of mending, unfolded the months he'd missed. Frank's rages turning inward, whiskey bottles shattering against walls. Her own unraveling, therapy sessions in the church basement where Father O'Malley finally admitted, "Love isn't a checklist, Evelyn." Lena's role was the bridge, smuggling Gavin's sketches to their mom, whispering doubts into Frank's ear until he barked her out too. "He called me filthy once after you left, for defending you." I told him to look in the mirror. The confession hung heavy, turnovers untouched, the room thick with the scent of cinnamon and sorrow. Gavin sank beside his mother, the couch dipping like gravity's pull, and for the first time, he saw her not as accomplice but casualty, trapped in a marriage that demanded her soul for scraps of peace. "I was scared," she whispered, hand finding his, cold fingers warming in the clasp. "Scared of losing him, of hellfire, of what the neighbors would say. But losing you, that's the real damnation." Tears carved paths down her cheeks, and Gavin's dam broke, sobs racking him as he pulled her close, Lena joining the huddle. Their trio a knot of limbs and apologies under the flicker of a bare bulb. They stayed through the storm, trading stories like contraband. Frank's hidden letters from the war, tender scrawls to a sweetheart he'd lost. Gavin's city scars, the zine's final issue dedicated to ghosts we love anyway. Lena's quiet rebellion, dating a barista named Jax who quoted Whitman and wore rainbow pins unashamed. Dawn crept in, gray light filtering through grimy blinds, and Evelyn's voice steadied. Come home, Gavin. Not to the house, the family. We're mending now, stitches and all. He hesitated, Riley's ghost whispering from the empty frame on the wall, but nodded, the word, okay, a bridge half-built. The funeral was a steel town requiem. Bagpipes wailing over the Monongahela, mill workers in ill-fitting suits muttering condolences like prayers. Gavin stood at the grave's edge, dirt black under his nails from clutching the eulogy Lena had co-written. Words of a father's fire, tempered too late. Frank's casket gleamed under overcast skies, roses wilting in the humid air, and as the first shovelful hit wood, Gavin felt the shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but release. A weight lifted, featherlight, leaving space for something new. Evelyn squeezed his hand, her rosary now a necklace shared, and Lena leaned in. Proud of you, bro. Always was. Back in Brooklyn, the apartment felt less like exile, more like interlude. Gavin packed light, sketches rolled under his arm, silver chain glinting farewell. But before the train west, a package arrived, brown paper, LA postmark, Riley's scrawl on the label. Inside, a camera, loaded with film, and a note. Framed you wrong. Come find me. R. Heart stuttering, Gavin slung it over his shoulder, the lens a window to uncharted light. The platform hummed with departures, Pennsylvania bound, but his eyes scanned the crowd. Not for ghosts, but horizons. The train rattled through the Appalachians, hills folding like green accordions, and Gavin sketched furiously. Mom's profile softened by grief's alchemy, Lena's grin fierce as a fox, Riley's phantom smile half-formed. Pittsburgh unfolded familiar yet foreign. Bridges he'd crossed 1,000 times now arcing toward unknown shores. The house on Elm Street sagged under ivy, windows dark, but inside, Evelyn had lit candles, the air thick with simmering chili and hope's tentative spice. Welcome home, she said, no sermons, just arms open wide. Lena pulled him into the kitchen, Jax hovering shyly in the doorway, his hey man laced with ally warmth. They ate at the scarred oak table, laughter bubbling through tears, stories looping like vinyl grooves. Frank's war yarns retold without the barbs, Gavin's city tales sparking envy in Jax's eyes. Nights were harder, the master bedroom a minefield of memories. So Gavin claimed the attic, dust motes dancing in slanted light like fireflies. He developed Riley's film in a makeshift darkroom, Jax's borrowed gear splashed with chemtrails, images emerging like revelations. Polaroids of them tangled in sheets, Gavin's laugh frozen mid-bloom. A close-up of his chain against bare chest, captioned, Anchor. The last roll was blank. Riley's joke? Or plea? Fill it yourself? The note urged, and Gavin did. Snapping Mom kneading dough, Lena and Jax stealing kisses by the fridge, the Mon Valley at dusk, steel ghosts gilded gold. Word spread through the Milltown grapevine. Gavin Harlan, back and unbowed, the filthy son who'd risen from ashes. Old-timers clapped his shoulder at the VFW, awkward amends in their grunts. Your pop was hard, kid, but he bragged about those drawings. Whispers followed, of course, church ladies clucking over coffee, but Lena's Jax ran a pride picnic in the park, rainbows fluttering defiant against gray skies, and Gavin manned the grill, flipping burgers with a grin that dared judgment. Ellis even showed up, sheepish from Philly, now out and partnered to a sound tech. Missed this, he said, hugging tight, no shadows between them. But the real shift brewed in quiet moments, like the evening Evelyn unearthed Frank's footlocker, Vietnam relics spilling. Dog tags, faded photos, a letter yellowed with time. To my boy, it began, inked in a hand Gavin knew. If you're reading this, I fucked up. Love's a battlefield, son. Fight clean. Tears blurred the page, and Evelyn's voice wove through. He wrote it after you left. Never sent it. Thought he'd fix it in person. Gavin traced the script, Forgiveness unfurling like a fern in shadow. Not erasure, but evolution. They burned the hate-filled pages in the backyard fire pit, ashes swirling skyward, a ritual smoke signal to whatever gods watched over fractured men. Riley's pull grew insistent, texts pinging like Morse. LA's brighter without you. Hurry up. Gavin booked the ticket one crisp October morning, leaves carpeting the streets like confetti for his Exodus redux. Mom packed his bag with wool socks and a thermos of her stew. For the road, love. Her eyes bright with pride, not possession. Lena drove him to the station, Jack's shotgun, blasting Springsteen. Tramps like us. Baby, we were born to run. At the platform, hugs lingered, promises etched. Holidays, visits, a family rewoven thread by thread. The train south hummed with possibility, Pennsylvania fading to Maryland flats, then Virginia's rolling tobacco fields. Gavin framed shots through the window. Silos like sentinels, rivers snaking silver, his reflection superimposed. A man no longer fleeing, but chasing. LA waited, palm frond and sun-soaked. Riley's arms a harbor he'd earned. But the shift? It started in that rainy Brooklyn doorway, when ghosts knocked and he answered. Not with fists, but open palms. Love, he'd learned, wasn't a straight line from filth to grace. It was the detour, the derailment, the 5 months of storm that cleared the sky. The Amtrak pulled into Union Station under a sky bruised purple, LA's sprawl unfurling like a fever dream. Freeways veined with taillights, Hollywood Hills humped against the horizon like sleeping giants. Gavin stepped off, duffel slung and camera bouncing against his hip. The air thick with jasmine and exhaust. A far cry from Pittsburgh's coal dust bite. Riley waited by the curb, leaning on a battered Jeep, his grin splitting wide as canyon wind. Took you long enough, Harlan. No cap this time. Hair tousled by Santa Annis, eyes crinkling with that fog-gray mischief. Gavin closed the distance in 3 strides, crashing into him. Their kiss salt-sweet with 5 months missing. Hands fisting shirts, breaths mingling like smoke signals. They drove Mulholland at dusk, city lights winking below like a million hesitant confessions. Riley's hand on Gavin's thigh a steady anchor. Show me everything, Gavin said, voice husky, and Riley did. The Griffith Observatory's dome gleaming like a silver dollar. Tacos from a truck that bled lime and spice. His studio apartment in Silver Lake. A sun-drenched loft with exposed brick and negatives drying like laundry. They made love that night on a futon overlooking the reservoir. Bodies mapping new territories. Riley's whispers a litany. Missed this curve, this scar you. Dawn found them tangled, coffee brewing. Plans sketched on napkins. Joint exhibit, road trip to Joshua Tree. A life not borrowed but built. But America's undercurrents run deep, and LA's glamour hit hooks. Additions that ghosted, landlords with eviction smiles, the grind of side hustles to fund dreams. Gavin waitressed at a WeHo bistro, dodging propositions with a Harlan glare, while Riley shot weddings for cash, his lens capturing joy he chased in frames. Their rhythm held, though mornings trading sketches for proofs, evenings on the Hollywood sign trail, panting up switchbacks as coyotes yipped below. Gavin sent Polaroids east. Him and Riley silhouetted against smoggy sunsets. Mom's reply a scrawled, radiant, my boy. Lena's emojis a rainbow riot. The conflict simmered subtle at first, like heat haze on the 101. Riley's fellowship demanded travel. Vegas for a doc short, Portland for indie fests, and absences stretched, texts turning terse. Miss you. Busy. Gavin filled voids with ink, his zine contacts linking him to a queer-lit collective in Echo Park. Readings where voices cracked open like geodes. There, he met Theo, a poet with ink-sleeve arms and a laugh like breaking glass. His verses raw hymns to survival. Foster kid turned firebrand. Eyes that saw through bullshit to bone. Your lines hit like uppercuts, Theo said post-reading, buying Gavin a mezcal that burned prophetic. Harmless at first, drinks after hours, dissecting Frank's letter over late-night foe. But the pull was magnetic, Theo's touch lingering on a shoulder, his "you're holding back" artist echoing Riley's old warnings. Gavin confessed over FaceTime, Riley's pixelated face tightening from 300 miles north. Just friends, babe. Promise. But doubt seeded, Riley's replies cooling to cool. Trust you. The betrayal bloomed in Joshua Tree. A weekend escape Gavin planned as salve. Canyon walls echoing their vows, stars a canopy of absolution. They hiked Barker Dam at dawn, Riley's camera clicking Gavin against red rock. But tension crackled like dry brush. "Theo again?" Riley asked, casual as a side eye, and Gavin's defensiveness flared. "Why's it always suspicion? I'm here, aren't I?" Words escalated under the merciless sun. Riley's fear of another ghost, Gavin's scar from Frank's filthy scar, until Riley hurled the real grenade. "Found the texts, Gav. Meet me after your place. You think I'm blind?" The park's silence swallowed them, wind hissing through Joshua's spines like accusatory whispers. Gavin's denial crumbled. "It was nothing, a kiss, I stopped it." But Riley's hurt was a chasm, eyes storm dark. "Nothing? That's how it starts, man. I dragged you here to rebuild, not watch you rebuild walls." He stormed back to the Jeep, Gavin trailing pleas, but the drive home was a funeral procession. Radio off, canyons blurring to tears. At the loft, Riley packed a bag. Not leaving, but needing space. His "I love you, but this hurts" a knife twist. Alone, Gavin called Theo. No more. The poet's "your loss" slithered cold. But the real villain was Gavin's own echo. Running from shadows, indeed. Word traveled east like bad news on the wire. Lena's call came midnight. "Spill. Bro mom's baking pies like it's Armageddon." Gavin unloaded, voice cracking over the line. Her advice blunt as Pittsburgh winters. "Fly home. Face the music, yours, not Dad's." He booked the red eye, Silver Lake fading in the cabin window, palms giving way to Midwest flats. Pittsburgh greeted with a chill bite. Leaves skeletonized. The house on Elm aglow like a beacon. Evelyn enveloped him at the door, flour-dusted apron a hug, chili simmering with extra heat. "Boys and their storms," she murmured. "No sermons, just presence. Humanity's quiet miracle." Lena and Jax piled in, beers cracked, a makeshift intervention under the harvest moon. "Love's not a still life, Gav," Lena said, Jax nodding sage. "It's the mess, the fights, the fixes." They unearthed Frank's old 8-tracks, Springsteen's gravel voice filling the kitchen. "We gotta get out while we're young, 'cause tramps like us." Gavin laughed through tears, the music a bridge to Riley's texts. Unread, but waiting. Dawn brought resolve. He flew back, heart armored in Harlan grit, finding Riley at the loft, shutter clicking aimless at the window. "I'm sorry," Gavin started, no defenses, just raw. The kiss, the fear, the father's ghost that made him flinch from joy. Riley turned, camera dropping, his "me too," for doubting us a key turning. They collapsed together, apologies weaving into plans. Therapy apps shared, boundaries sketched like blueprints, an exhibit deadline to chase. The climax crested at the gallery opening 3 months later. Neon-lit warehouse in DTLA, walls hung with their collab. Gavin's charcoals bleeding into Riley's gels, themes of fracture and forge, filthy grace the centerpiece, a diptych of storm-swept faces resolving to light. Crowds milled, critics murmured, but the real thunder was Mom and Lena's arrival. Evelyn in a flowered dress, rosary tucked away, Lena arm in arm with Jax. "You did it, son," Evelyn whispered amid the throng, her pride a bomb. Frank's absence loomed, but not as void. His letter framed nearby, ink a testament to late blooms. Riley pulled Gavin aside, ring box subtle in his palm. Not proposal, but promise. Together. Gavin's yes was a vow sealed with Salt Lake kiss. The after-party spilled to rooftops, city sprawling benevolent below, and Gavin felt the shift complete. Not erasure of the filthy label, but alchemy. Pain transmuted to power, betrayal to bond, 5 months exile to a lifetime's anchor. America, with its rusted hearts and rainbow veins, had schooled him well. Love wasn't clean or straight. It was the dirty fight worth every bruise. Epilogues in real life aren't tidy, but Gavin's unfolded like a roadmap creased from use, detours marking growth. A year on, the exhibit toured Philly's Queer Arts Fest, where Ellis teared up over filthy grace, hugging Riley like old kin. Chicago's galleries, Lena crashing with tales of Jax's proposal under the bean, a ring glinting like stolen starlight. Evelyn visited LA for Christmas, her first flight a white-knuckled sacrament, marveling at the ocean's roar. Bigger than the Mon, but same wild heart. She and Riley bonded over pie crusts, her recipes mingling with his ma's empanada secrets, a culinary détente. Gavin's book deal landed serendipitous. A memoir-graphic novel hybrid, called Filthy, inked with his and Riley's visions, forward by Theo's rival poet who'd seen the light in his lines. Signings drew crowds. Rust Belt runaways with eyes like his younger self, LA dreamers nursing heartbreaks. Even a mill widow who'd known Frank, her he was proud, deep down a quiet absolution. Royalties bought the loft outright, no more month-to-month tightrope, and they adopted a mutt from the shelter, rusty, all wiry fur and wagging forgiveness. His bark's a soundtrack to their mornings. Conflicts lingered, of course. America's pulse erratic, pride flags fluttering against backlash winds. A Pittsburgh reading sparked protesters, Bible verses hurled like stones. But Gavin faced them unflinching. Riley's hand in his, Evelyn's voice rising steady. My son is grace incarnate. Judge that. The viral clip trended, hashtags blooming filthy no more, invitations flooding. TEDx talks on familial redemption, panels on queer resilience in the heartland. Lena birthed a niece. Harper rose Harlanjacks, tiny fists waving rainbow banners, and Gavin's sketches filled her nursery, whimsy over wounds. Riley's doc premiered at Sundance, a raw cut on foster kids chasing frames, Gavin's illustrations threading narrative like veins. The standing ovation blurred his vision. Riley's, we did this whispered amid cheers. Their clasped hands a microcosm of the whole. Messy, mended, mighty. Back home, they hiked Runyon Canyon at dawn, city waking below, rusty tugging leashes. 5 years from the alley, Riley mused one summit, sweat-slick and sun-kissed. And here we are, unshifted, unbreakable. Gavin leaned into him, horizon vast as healed hurt. Shifted everything, he corrected, lips brushing ear. For the better. Below, LA thrummed. Promises and pitfalls, America's grand, gritty experiment. And they descended, not running, but rooted. 2 men, forged in filth, blooming defiant. Love, in the end, wasn't the absence of storm. It was dancing in the downpour. Umbrellas traded for open arms. Family not blood but chosen, showing up when thunder calls. The silver chain still hung at Gavin's throat. A talisman now, not tether, Mom's gift, Frank's echo, his own anchor. And in quiet nights, when Riley's snores rumbled soft, Gavin sketched the future. Harper toddling between coasts, Evelyn's garden bursting with improbable roses, Lena's laugh echoing endless. No tidy bows, but humanity's weave, threads of betrayal rewoven to romance, drama distilled to deep, enduring light. 5 months had shifted the axis. The rest was theirs to spin.